Thank you for staying with us. You're still watching The Breakfast on Plus TV Africa. Don seeks smartphone ban in schools to curb distraction. Dr. Saeed Olorunnisola of Al-Hikmah University has urged the government to ban smartphone use in secondary and tertiary institutions, saying it would improve student concentration. He made the call at a national symposium on exam malpractice held in Osogbo. Olorunnisola blamed social media for distracting students, noting that many now snap lecture notes without studying them. He cited a university that banned phones, saying it helps students focus better in class. Professor Buniyamin Abdul Karim, chairman of MIMS board, said the event aimed to engage stakeholders in tackling rising cases of exam malpractices and restoring academic integrity. Joining us this morning is Dr. Peter Ogudoro. He's an education researcher. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to join you.
All right. So, ban of smartphones in school, and of course, in fact, one of the things they said is they're, having talks with stakeholders and, experts in this field. So, you are an expert in this field. First, what is your own reaction to the ban of smartphones in school? Good call or bad call?
No, certainly. It's very unfortunate that such a call will be coming from a significant member of the average tower. I'm having difficulty understanding why a professor of that status can, in the year 2025, be proposing that our students should not have access to technology that will give them access to the world while they're in the university. So it is completely illogical, especially given the person's background. I think he's a scientist, and the scientist knows that the business we do in universities is to give children enough space to let all ideas fly and give them access to their fellow students in other parts of the world, and of course intellectuals who operate within the ivory tower, both within and outside the country where they are studying. The reason why it's called university is it's got from the word universal. So you can't treat students in the university, undergraduates and graduate students, as people who operate in silos and expect them to graduate with excellent credentials, especially in terms of intellectual capacity to solve practical problems. And so, again, this tells you where we are as a people. If the people who run the system are coming up with ideas that are completely contradictory, ideas that oppose the existence of the institutions that pay them salary, you can then understand why even the students in the first place are beginning to think that education is scam. So rather than say we ban smartphones, we should be thinking of why are students not taking their studies seriously. And the availability of smartphones cannot be the 100% explanation that can be given to for us to understand why students are not taking their studies seriously. As a matter of fact, it doesn't even account for up to 5%. There is some element of reality in considering the possibility that there are students who get distracted by their smartphones. But the question is, why is that so? Those of us who do research in psychology and education, we know that every behavior is motivated. And so if you want to change in that behavior, you have to incentivize the people who are behaving in the ways you don't like to adopt new and more profitable behaviors. And so if you look at this, our situation as a country, especially with respect to education comprehensively, what you will find is that our students are finding what you're teaching them completely irrelevant to the world they live in today. And so they think that they can just take a snapshot of what you have given them and give it back to you just for the purpose of getting their credentials, because most of them are aware that what they have been told in universities are not the things they need to flourish in the world that we have in the year 2025. So if you want them to take their studies seriously, all you need to do is to start teaching what they want to hear. Here, in terms of Nigeria and the Nigerian education system. What you find, which is very unfortunate, is that we design curriculum without putting into consideration what students are interested in. So we think that because we are professors, we know what they need. Even when you hardly can find a Nigerian professor who has set up a business before and run it successfully. And so they think they can teach children how to run businesses, and without, allowing them to have access to the world where they can hear people like Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, people who are doing very practical things and which they can learn from. We are also behaving as if we are not aware that many of these children come from very marginalized, families, very economically disadvantaged, backgrounds, and they need to operate on the internet to be able to find money to pay their school fees, especially now that things are very expensive. Yeah. And they have set up different kinds of things. So when you see them doing TikTok, you think they are all doing TikTok because they want to have fun doing TikTok. No, they're looking for page views, they're looking for followers. And the more people who follow them, the more they are able to make money from YouTube, the more they're able to make money from TikTok, through the number of people they gather and who they bring to those platforms. So they make money. Yeah.
So with that, do you think that maybe what we're doing is treating the symptoms and not the disease? So the symptom obviously is distraction, and I'm sure that's for some of the students. But then the disease probably is digital literacy and critical thinking. How do you think we need to push that out now? Because this is the 21st century. We're probably now using a 20th century mindset to solve a problem in the 21st century. So how do we solve that problem right now? So instead of just removing the tech that these students need, what can we do to ensure that, they are no longer distracted?
So you see, when I say this, you think I'm cracking a joke. Look at the analysis you have done. I have said, if the people who run Nigeria are willing to listen to me, you should be Nigeria's Minister of Education, because you're using better than the people who are running the system. They are chasing shadows. They are leaving the substance and chasing shadows. They are not interested in the root of the problem. The root of the problem is the fact that even the professors themselves are very poor thinkers. Can't you see this one coming out from the Ivory Tower now? Really? So, and they are not asking themselves the question, are American students and students in Britain doing poorly compared to Nigerian, undergraduates and graduate students? The answer is certainly no. That's why even the people who want to ensure these policies, they send their children to Britain, they send their children to Canada, and they send them to other parts of North America, especially the United States of America. And we know that in those places they are sending their children to, right from primary school, children take smartphones to school. The proper thing to do is to train children on how to use smartphones. My children have been using smartphones and laptops since they were in kindergarten stages in their education journey. And it's because I exposed them to computers, to internet early in life, that they have become globally competitive. The kind of intellectuals they have become today. And several other people across the world have done similar things for their children. And the average educational institution that is at cutting edge level it will even insist that if you don't have a laptop, you can't come to school. If you don't have a smartphone, you shouldn't come to the class. Because at certain points in the classroom, the teacher takes you to the internet, and if you haven't got your own device, you won't be able to function there. Yeah. So children are trained. I do research in the Scandinavian region, and what they do in Finland, for example, is to ensure that as children are coming into this stage where we are, beginning to worry, children are getting distracted, they train them on how to use their smartphones and what smartphones are meant for. And you see that those children are using those things properly. They know when to use them to play, because play is also part of what it takes to become, to thrive and flourish in a modern society. They also know when to put away their phones and then focus on their studies. And as a matter of fact, your phone makes studying easy, makes studying, pleasurable, brings fun to the education space, which keeps the attention of students, on the table, and ensures that everybody works together. So how do you do collaborative work in a modern society in the absence of digital devices? So I do not know where these people are coming from, and that again tells you that if we have to move forward as a country, we have to first gather our professors and train them on how to think creatively. We train them on how to even use their own smartphones. Sometimes what you find is that because most of them are not even able to use these devices properly, they don't know what buttons to press to get what they're looking for. The smart thing they they think they should do is to prevent students from using those things so that they don't come across as people who are running behind time. So my sister, I think you should go and become, professor. Why the professors come and do broadcasting?
Oh, thank you so much for that. But I don't know if that's for me. Anyways, looking at it now, I mean, I love how you've spoken about, collaborative involvement. And if we're looking at a tech-driven future, of which the future is here already, how do we balance, integrity, especially when it comes to education? And what role can the parents and educators play in this to ensure that we're imbibing in the students what they need, not just saying we're going to ban this because you are being distracted by it. So what role can even the government, when it comes to policies, what can we do to ensure that these students stay focused, but they're not just staying focused because we ask them to, they're staying focused because we're putting something out, like an example for them to follow, a model for them to follow. How do we go about that?
Yes, there you go again. You see, the way you talk proves to me that I'm right. You should not be the person doing the job. I'm surprised that these people cannot think like you. Look at it. You are getting it right. So make sure you get the stakeholders together. Because education is a collaborative endeavor. Yeah. Here in Nigeria, we keep thinking that education begins and ends in the classroom. As a matter of fact, parents are the ones who start the journey, who start the process. But in Nigeria, we exclude parents most of the time. Once parents have paid their school fees, we think they no longer have a role to play. And we know that, especially those of us who do research in attitude change, what we know is that the best way to get anybody to adopt a new behavior is to model it, and not just to preach it to them. So what we are doing in Nigeria is to preach to children, don't get distracted.
Do what I say, not what I do.
Don't know what I do. Okay? So if you want children to use their phones properly, you use their devices properly, parents should demonstrate it at home. Parents should show their children while they are in kindergarten how to use phones, how to use laptops, and when not to use them, and when to use them. But what you find is at home, parents come back from work, and they all sit down there, everybody is having his telephone, and laptops, and they're all smiling. And the children are looking at them, so why is mommy smiling? And mommy is watching one funny character on the internet who calls himself a social influencer. And what is the person talking about? He's just cracking jokes, things that are not useful. But if mommy sits down when she comes back from work and mommy is reading an article and calling that the children to the article she's reading, mommy is watching a YouTube video about maybe where Bill Gates is giving a talk at Harvard, commencement, ceremony. Yeah, you are getting children to imbibe, the values of intellectual engagement very early in their lives. These are things people like us have done, and we have seen the profit in that. So nobody should make the mistake of thinking that preventing children from using smartphones is the way to get them to do well in life. I think, again, there is this misunderstanding about what we're in the education system to do. We think that schooling amounts to education. No, what professors in Nigeria and even the regular teachers think the education does is to just put children through schooling. And then once they go through schooling and finish with 8 A's or 9 A's in their school certificate exam, then they have become educated people. That's not true. Education delivers much more than that. You can actually finish as an underdog in terms of grades, but go out there in the larger world and excel beyond the widest imagination of your mates who thought you were going to fail and become the employer of the people who finished with the best of grades. And we have done researches in these areas and we have seen that consistently. Yeah. So you can't prevent children from holding smartphones in a modern society and expect that they will be creative individuals. We have no evidence, scientific evidence that proves that.
True. And because that's just the world we live in right now. I mean, look at what students are doing in China. You're seeing kids, as young as 6-year-old, they're already coding, programming. And I'm like, we have a long way to go with the Nigerian educational system, because it's ridiculous what people are doing out there, and we're still here, expecting that people would have to write on paper, and you're complaining about them taking pictures of their class notes with their smartphones saying they don't read. I'm sorry, even if they take the notes by pen and paper. If they don't want to read it, they still would not read it. And that brings me to my final question. What do you think we need to do with our curriculum in Nigeria? Because I think that might be a big issue, because that's why the students are probably being distracted. They're not engaging as much. So what do we need to change with our curriculum to ensure that we're setting these kids, you know, up for success, and you know, everything that we give them, they can compete with any other person in any other parts of the world?
Yeah, so again, the proper way to look at the matter is to recognize that our curriculum is decrepit, is far behind time, is anachronistic. We have to throw it away and take children to where they want to be. We are not teaching our children what they want to learn. And so long as we continue to teach them what they know is not going to be useful when they leave the university or leave secondary schools and go to the real world, for that long will they continue to use their smartphones to do TikTok, because they are getting rewards from TikTok. They are making money from YouTube. They are making money from Facebook. And they know at the end of the day that we live in a society that, you know, has a culture that says money is everything. Politicians model this for us. So why would politicians be making money and they're riding jeeps in the street, and you don't want children to use their phones to also go on the internet and make their own money? And they have seen that some of us who have invested over 40 years of our lives doing academics, they look at us and they say, okay, what's the value? What's the reward? Whereas a child who comes up tomorrow with his smartphone, he goes on the internet, sets up a YouTube channel, and in a matter of 6 months, he has become a multimillionaire. So ultimately, what is the relevance of what you're teaching the child? So we need to, apart from working on the curriculum, as we move in the direction of rejigging our curriculum, we must consult the children themselves. They have ideas as to what they want to learn. Yeah. We shouldn't see them as professors and give them curriculum. Ask children, what do you want to learn? That's what they have done in the Scandinavian region, and that's why that region remains the best region in the world when it comes to the quality of education they are offering today, especially at, you know, primary, secondary school levels, and which again fits into what they're getting with respect to higher education. Beyond that, we must also train the people who run the system, the policymakers, the teachers who stand in classrooms, and of course the school owners. We need to reorientate them. They don't know what they are doing. Most of them don't understand what education is about. That's very problematic. So if a professor doesn't understand why children are using smartphones, he should have the humility to go and ask researchers in the area why children are not focusing on their stuff, on their studies, and then they're preferring to go on YouTube. And if we ask the question, we'll find why. And we already have done the research. We know why. The curriculum is not engaging. What we're teaching them is not relevant to the real world they are going to face. So they prefer to even, as a matter of fact, if you stop them from using their smartphones, they will all choose to stop, to disengage from university completely. So what you will find will be a mass exodus of smart people who leave universities and go and use their phones and their laptops to look for money today, because that's where the world is. As a matter of fact.
Yeah. And we definitely need to keep them.
What we spend 4 years trying to teach children in Nigerian universities are things you can actually consolidate and teach them in only 3 months with the right technology. So we should get smarter than we are as a people.
Thank you so much. And honestly, I think even the guidance and counseling in, you know, secondary schools need to help them in choosing the right courses, because if you're not interested in something that you're doing, you definitely would be distracted. So hopefully with this, we're not looking at just treating the disease or just treating the symptoms. We're looking at the root cause of the matter and sorting that out holistically. Anyways, want to say thank you so much for coming, Peter. It's always a pleasure having you. Thank you for your time.
Excellent. Have a great day.
You too, sir. All right, so we're speaking with Peter Ogudoro. He's an education researcher, and we've just been looking at the fact that Adon seeks to, you know, just have a ban of smartphones in universities to curb distractions. This is how much we can take on the show today. Thank you so much for having the breakfast with me. As always, my name is Rumette Paulson. I'll see you again tomorrow. Have a wonderful day. Good morning.